Alright, hello everyone. We are back for another Golf Clash tutorial video here. This is going to be for Tour 11. It's going to be part 2. So, just setting up my bag here. You can see very similar to what I had last time. In terms of ball selection, same, very similar. Going to pretty much stick to Kingmakers in this tour, so hopefully you guys have been saving them. If you didn't watch part 1, I didn't mean to go to tournament. If you didn't watch part 1, you may want to check that out because I did go over kind of why I'm setting up the clubs, why I'm playing the balls that I'm doing. I'm just going to kind of jump right in it to just kind of save some time on this video. So let's keep it going, see if I can't get some original holes here. Of course, you'll find in Tour 11, Tour 12, it might be a little bit tougher to match. Sometimes you may have to, wait to play a opponent. You should still be able to get some live opponents, though. It just kind of depends on, kind of when you're searching for a game. So let's take a look here. Oh, wow. Interesting wind. Very, very tough wind. What you'll try to do typically is I'll try to land somewhere maybe right around in here. One of the things that you can do is, definitely curl this and try to land. You do want to get this onto the fairway. That looks pretty good. As long as you catch that fairway, you don't necessarily need to hold it. But it is also very, very challenging to catch that fairway. So I'm going to do what I can to try to get that in the same spot. And it's even harder with Thor's hammer to get it. So you're going to see that I'm going to kind of back off this in terms of topspin. It's going to help the ball to cut. So you can see how my opponent's wasn't cutting. So you can also see that I'm kind of aiming. You can see with that wind direction, it's kind of maybe pointing towards somewhere around here, in the hopes that it's going to kind of over curl because I'm going to put some curl on this thing. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to essentially just kind of over curl it. And it looks like I'm able to get it to hold up into the fairway. So again, like I was mentioning, you just want to kind of stay away from that left edge. If you don't hit that first bounce on the fairway, you kind of really put yourself at a disadvantage here. Even my opponent here, had we got a straight headwind, it would have been hard for him to get. So you can imagine, how you can put yourself in trouble by just, making just one mistake here off the tee can definitely cost you. So you do want to just be a little bit careful. But you'll see, no real problem here getting to the green or anything. So alls we'll try to do here, first off, I like to use maybe about minus 15%. You'll see from the take shot view that it's a very, very uphill shot here. You can see that the green is very, very elevated. So you can see with where I'm trying to land, and maybe somewhere around here, I'm probably going to use very, very close to the max ring number. You can also see that it kind of sometimes glitches out. So, you can get kind of a bad break with the way that your shot rolls out. So you do want to just be a little bit cautious. I'm going to use the wind directional arrow. Keep in mind that I'm pulling away from max, so maybe 9-ish rings, but I also need to kind of pull a little bit short, so maybe I'm only going to go 6 or 7 here, because you can actually see that I'm trying to land a little bit beyond the max line. Because landing behind the max line, it kind of comes in more towards the hole. You could see that the ball guide in front of where I was a little bit better than actually the max line. But, you know, you do have to watch out because, as I mentioned, you can get that rough second bounce, how it just kind of scoots through and goes into the rough. And, you know, it will happen from time to time with the wood, especially in tailwind situations. So you'll just need to be really careful there. And that's one of the reasons that you see me trying to avoid the top spin. Very tough to get this albatross. You know, more times than not, you'll just be kind of settling here for eagle, going to the shootout. So that's the main thing that you want to focus on. I'm just going to go for the dunk there. You know, just if you dunk, you just kind of make sure that the ball's kind of in the center of the shot circle, that you're not taking off power. That's the biggest thing. Oh, wow. So new Maple Bay hole. So let's take a look at this one. You know what? Maybe I'm actually going to split this up just so I can... Oh, no, I can't since I'm streaming. Man, I'd love to have... Because I need this in my shootout list. Because I'm not even sure I got this one in Tour 12 yet. Or in Tour 11. So you can see what the wind direction is. I'm going to kind of set up for it. I would not recommend going for where my opponent is. Now, I typically don't use elevation on this hole. You'll see from the take shot view that it's very flat in line with where you're trying to land. So I won't be using elevation here. I also won't be trying to bring it around that way because you can see that it's much harder to get the ball to actually cut. You know, if the wind is this direction, you might as well try to play with the wind instead of try to play against it. So what I'm going to try to do is kind of play over here, 11.7 rings somewhere up in here, 14 at max. We're not quite at max, so I'm thinking somewhere around here, 70-ish%. And as I mentioned, you might as well play with the wind. So you can kind of see with what I'm doing here, with the curl, with the backspin, all this good stuff, and kind of just offsetting my ball guide. So let's take a look at what this looks like. And also note that I'm pulling down to lower ground, so I might underpull this. I underpulled this by about half a ring. It's because I'm actually moving closer into the bunker. So you need to kind of maybe underplay what your adjustment is. But you can see, you know, playing the wind effect and kind of offsetting that ball guide, you know, it's going to give you a very good chance to it's going to give you a very good chance to put it in there close. Just keep in mind, you know, that was my first time playing that shot on that tour. But I could just see, you know, once I saw that I was starting to pull down to the lower ground, even though my ring told me to go 13, you could see that I just slightly underpulled it. I only went 12 and a half, you know, 12 and a half. It's because once I actually saw that I was pulling down the lower ground into the bunker, I knew that the ball was no longer going to carry at that same trajectory. It's going to lower the trajectory, which means it's going to have less wind effect. And usually, you know, we're talking about a very marginal amount, you know, 5%, you know, very, very small. It's nothing that you really have to usually worry about, unless the severity of the slope, though, is very much a huge factor. So if the slope that you're going down is very large, much larger than that little drop down that I had there, then you'll have to adjust even more. Sometimes it's 10, 15, 20% even. In fact, if you want to see some really big drop-offs, look at my Tour 12 video. I think it's hole number 4 from Port Hello. When you go for that green and drop off, you'll find that you know, you have to significantly underpull rings. It's significant because the elevation drop-off is so high. So just keep in mind that correlation, and I think you'll have a lot more success. More slope means, you know, more underpull because the trajectory is getting that much lower. So let's take a look here. Maple Bay, hole 7, par 4. First look at this in tour play here. So what I'd like to get this into the fairway here, but this might be very, very challenging wind to do so. I may try to just go for a hook here, kind of something like this. And what I'll typically do, first off, I'm going to try to land it right around here, which I'm going to put the left of my bullseye to kind of align with that. And then I'm probably only going to go maybe like 8 rings from this spot because it is a headwind. I might not even go 8. I might go right here, 7-ish rings. Now, I usually go 2 full targets, which would be 1 stacked on top, which is, 10 rings. But the only reason that I'm going less is because it's a headwind. And you can see it looks like I am going to hold on to the wind. You need to know how to play different wind scenarios and how many rings to go. I only adjusted 7 rings there, playing off the left of my target. So, and you can see that it's still very much on the right-hand side. Now, with an Apocalypse, I wouldn't need to even do a hook shot. All I'd need to do is do some curl. But since Thor's Hammer doesn't have curl, you have to compensate sometimes. So keep that in mind. And you always have to be thinking about this in terms of the hook. If I have a headwind, if I have a side wind, if I have a tailwind, they all need to be different factors. For more of like a side wind or a very low wind, you'll see that I'll stack 1 full bullseye. In this situation, I went 3 less rings. In a tailwind situation, I might need to go 3 5 rings, depending on how severe the 5 rings extra than the base, than the base side wind. So I was going essentially 3 under because of the fact that it was a headwind there. So let's take a look. You'll see that I'll be pulling up towards max. Another thing that I'll be doing is I'll be doing an overplay. Now this overplay is not elevation based. It's because of the severity of the wind. You can see that we're actually slightly uphill. Now what I'll typically do, especially into the wind, is I'm only going to play about 8 bars. And you'll see kind of how my ball guide, I expect it to kind of roll back towards the hill. I must be on the wrong club or something. There's no way this is 10 rings. Something's not right. I'm going to run out of time. I'm on sniper. So, all right. I was doing too much talking there. We'll see if I can't, still hold it out for birdie, hopefully. I really don't need to win. It's not that big a deal. It's more about, walking you guys through the shots. I could tell you, I lost about 5 seconds there because when I was looking at the rings, I just got really confused as to why the rings were what they were. But, let's keep this going. See if I can't get this, And it looks like my opponent might have just gave me a window anyway. So we'll see if he's able to get that. We're going to change the way that we do this. Now, instead of pulling towards max now, we're going to be pulling a little bit more down towards mid, but you'll see that I'll never make it to mid, so I can't use that adjustment. So it's probably going to be somewhere around here. Same thing. We're still going to do some kind of overplay. I'm thinking 5-ish rings in this situation. And with this case, I might try to use the full backspin for this isolated case. So in this case, you can see kind of what I'm doing, right around 5 rings. Perfect ball. Just see if I can't bend it around the stick, and it looks like I still hit the stick. But you can see that's the reason that I'm trying to put that side spin on, so it doesn't do that. However, I still clip the pin. So that's one of the main reasons that I try to always use side spin on those pitches and just try to bend it. And it seemed more logical to me to use right spin there because it kind of when you do it against the wind, you could see how it was kind of a left wind. It helps the ball to slow down. So instead of coming in and going with the wind and then having extra dramatic effect, I'll usually try to sometimes, in winds like that, I'll try to bend it around the other way. So you could see that I was trying to use right spin there in that situation. This actually works out because we get to the shootout. And there's no way I would have been able to predict him missing. You know, it's more about showing you guys the shots. I don't really care if I won this match or not. I still, you know, could potentially win in the shootout anyway. But it's just nice that we can, you know, get to the shootout so you guys can see more shots, because I would have probably won this hole with eagle had I not timed out. Or not with eagle, but at least with birdie. And I probably wouldn't have hit the pin, so I, you know, had a good chance to make that for eagle on that first wind as well. I still almost missed that pin to begin with. I was, you know, it almost seems like, you know, I just needed maybe just a little bit more curl to get that around there. But let's take a look. I usually use plus 5% on this hole. So that's what we'll be doing. Now, when we're very, very close to min driver, I'm trying to think about whether or not to use sniper or Thor. Because what's nice about being able to, I mean, it's very, very close to min driver. And what's nice about the driver is you can usually go less rings, and it makes it just a little bit easier to control the wind effect. So you'll see oftentimes, you know, guys may miss this significantly left. And this is kind of a case in point. So as I'm mentioning, if I can kind of, you know, use kind of a min driver, I can kind of control it a little bit better. So let's just see if I can kind of get down here. It looks like 6.5 rings. Ooh, that's close though. Man, that's close. So I'm going to try it. It might require just a little bit of a short hit. 6 rings. So you can see that I'm kind of intentionally short hitting it. And, you know, as I was mentioning, the main reason that I kind of like this shot is just because it really controls the trajectory. It keeps the ball lower. And you can see that the wind effect is much less. You don't have to worry about it kind of carrying way to the left. So that's one of the reasons that I like to go with the min driver in situations like that. So just another tip for you. You can see that I probably short hit that at least a ring, maybe a ring and a half. So if you want to pay attention to kind of the power level that I was putting there towards the top of the shot circle, we're pretty much looking at maybe 97, 98% power when I do something like that. So let's keep going here. See if we can't get a couple more. All right. So a couple different ways to do this into a side wind. One of the things I can do, which I like to do from time to time, is kind of bring it over here. Can be just a little bit tougher of a tee shot, but it can have its advantages if you can get the ball over here. So I may just try it. Just see if I can get it over here. Looks like I have, what, plus 5%? I'm okay with plus 5% in this case. So 7.5 rings. Bull curl. A lot of top spin. So you can see that I'm just trying to kind of stretch it down here kind of as far as I can. When you get it down here far, you can typically kind of get around the trees a little bit and have a very good look at the backstop. So if you can get that down there far enough, as you can see kind of where I am, it really gives you a good angle to not have to worry about the trees, and you can kind of control the power. It really gives you a good attempt to be able to hold this. Otherwise, you guys have seen me lay up here, and I do think we got this hole in the last stream, so you can probably check out the other stream and find a layup shot. But this actually works for me because this way you guys get to see kind of two different perspectives to play this hole. And I like both methods, and I kind of prefer this one just a little bit more, especially when I have my B52 at kind of a higher level. Right now, it's just kind of a little bit premature. So I am only on a backbone. However, backbone's still going to be good too. You can actually see I'm going to be pulling down towards min here. So I will need to be pulling down towards min, which might be, 11-ish%, 10-ish%. And as I mentioned, especially with these side spin balls, you'll find that you can really kind of get around these trees and just kind of try to play this hill a little bit and really give this a kind of a good run. So 7-ish rings. Just a touch of curl. Just coming up a little bit short. So that's one of the reasons that, I really like that B52 to kind of be up a little bit, because you have just a little bit more ball guide so you can actually see how to control it. Another thing, I don't grind this tour, so, I haven't played that shot in a while. I don't really play the game much at all. So, sometimes I just get, a little forgetful in kind of the way that it's going to run off hills like that. However, you can see that it's going to give you a very, very good chance, especially if you can control the speed and, play that. You'll be able to really give yourself a good chance. Now, what I would do in a situation like this, well, first off, I probably wouldn't have used a marlin. But, because side spin's going to be, what I would do is crank up the backspin pretty much full and then max curl as well. But if you crank up this backspin, what'll happen is you can see that it actually controls off that hill. You can see that it was still, kind of holdable with the way that you're able to play it. But with a Kingmaker, for instance, that shot becomes much easier because you have all that side spin to do as well. And as I mentioned, if you crank up that backspin, you can see how you can just kind of control the way that it comes in. So let's get to the shootout. I'm not sure which one of these I'm going to do. A lot of times I can just kind of wing the sniper shot because it's essentially one per ring, but a little bit of overplay, especially with tailwinds, headwinds, stuff like that. But you'll see that I really don't need much elevation in this tour in the shootouts whatsoever. Most of them are going to be 5% or less. This one might not even be that. So it really pays for this hole to go second, especially with a tricky wind like this. This is an extremely tough wind. You can see my opponent's going to try some kind of bunker bump shot. Can be pulled off. Can also potentially leave it in the bunker. Even if he does leave it in the bunker, this is a very, very tricky chance for me to, you really have to proceed with caution. If this guy puts this, 14 yards or something, all I really need to do is get it on the green. So you might just want to try to focus on some kind of shot that'll put it on the green if he makes a mistake, which it looks like he did. There's no way to guarantee that you're going to get it to roll out of the bunker. In fact, he's 18 yards. So what I'll typically do, there's kind of two ways that I can go about doing this. If I can do some kind of bounce shot here, you'll see that I can just kind of roll it through and just kind of make sure that it gets over onto the green. So if I'm not too careless, you can see that I can just kind of aim at this spot. And all I'm going to do is just kind of play one per ring. I really don't need to do much here. I just kind of got to make sure that I, just kind of pull this shot off and, get it down onto the green somewhere. So you can see that I'm just kind of making sure that it rolls down towards the hole and just try to pick up an easy win there. If you try to get too cute and try to land up on that high hill, which I typically do, but not going second like that. Once I see where my opponent is, I can just easily beat him by putting it on the green. So that's all I'm going to try to do. So if you ever see yourself in a situation where you get that hole and you just have, something that you can easily do, don't try to do too much. Just try to make sure that you take care of business, put it on the green. So I didn't even use the notebook tool for that. Really don't need it. You could see all points over there on that side hill were pretty much going up onto the green. And if anything, I wanted to over top spin it. I didn't care if it rolled through into the back of the green, because on the back of the green, you're never going to be 18 yards. So playing your opponent can be very, very smart from time to time. So let's keep going here. Parc de Paris, hole 6. This is a hole that you pretty much just want to focus on making sure you get into the fairway. So pretty good clubs for this guy. I'm pretty impressed. This guy paid some money. That is crazy. So all those pro tournaments, you can't even get a single APACA card at all. Not one. Not one. So he only had 2 tournaments that he could have got in a single one. With pro and rookie, so with rookie cards, you can only get Tour 3 chess. With pro tournaments, you can only get Tour 6 chess. So the best clubs you can get would be like Amazon, Thor's Hammer. So, you could grind out pro tournaments and get, your Thor up, but not your Apocalypse. So let's take a look here. Won't really use elevation, 6.5 rings on my tool. Another thing that I might need here is maybe just, a little bit of top spin. And you'll see that kind of the natural curl here is just going to kind of drift it over towards the bunker. So I'm not going to put curl on it, but sometimes I might. So just keep that in mind. You can see I'm going to play right about 6-7 rings. And just a little bit of overpower. I shouldn't need to go full or anything, but just want kind of something. And you can see that I'm just trying to kind of land it over on the left side here. And with that great ball, it is going to push over towards the bunker, but because I don't curl it, you can see that it still lands okay. So also keep in mind when I go overpower, you could potentially, plus 5%. I probably use the plus 5%, so, I could technically go an extra ring there. But, I felt pretty safe about what I was doing. Whew, Cat 7-2. So this guy is stacked with his deck. However, you'll see that, just because you're playing against top clubs doesn't mean you can't compete, because you very much can. We'll get to the shootout, and in my opinion, I'll actually have the advantage. I'll have to essentially, give this game away, or he'll have to, hit a really good quality shot, because I find Thor's Hammer and Sniper to be statistically better, kind of like a 60-40. So I would rather have my clubs than what my opponent has, to be honest with you. Like I wouldn't even when I play my main account, I don't use those clubs. So I can't tell if this is going to make it over or not. It's very, very close. So I may just go this way and try to use just a little bit of overpower with some backspin. Try to land somewhere in here with some curl. So I'm just going to kind of wing this. I'm not even going to go full overpower. I'm just going to kind of use some. More than anything, just trying to land on the fairway and then just get it to kind of curl over by the hole. You can see I'm just a little bit deep, but that's okay. Just wanted to make sure that I was, comfortably okay. And I was trying to play wind effect. So if you saw that I was kind of keeping the ball guide long, I was hoping, especially into an overpower shot, I'm looking at kind of the land zone 12, 14 rings back from where I'm kind of setting up an overpower. I expect kind of wind effect to kind of pull my ball a little bit more. So let's take a look here. You know, typically a pretty easy shot. We're talking under quarter club here, significantly under quarter club. There's 5. There's quarter club right there. Quarter club's about 5 per ring, so I'm even less than 5 per ring. And what I'll typically do, I won't use too much green here because you really don't need to. It's a little bit safer to play it this way and just play it tight into the hole. And you can see how I'm just playing kind of the left edge. Nothing too fancy here. You don't want to get too cute. And as I mentioned, you know, you really don't need to do much with the wind or anything, even with a great ball. It's just going to kind of, you know, feed right into the hole off a side hill. One of the worst things you could maybe try to do is try to get too much of that hill and try to use your top spin. It just gets a little bit careless when you do that. Now with this hole, I still like my chances here. This is a very good wind for a Parc 7. It makes you able to, you know, hit shots that you normally can't. We did have a wind similar to this in the past. So, you know, I did do this on kind of another one of my channels. I can usually get this one in here pretty tight, but I need to make sure that my ring adjustment is good as well. So you can see that I'm kind of setting my wind ahead of time. Just make sure that you go actually solidify that. If you do your wind ahead of time, make sure that you go double check it and actually put it back in. As I mentioned, you know, this can be a tough club to hit. You know, that's kind of more than anything kind of player mistake there, but so all I kind of need to do is kind of hit this front of the green. You'll see that I'll be pulling up towards max club, 12.3. This is going to be tough. Up towards max, you'll see that I'm very, very close to max, so I may go 9 rings here. Another thing that you'll see is kind of my method. You know, I might try to just land it up on the fringe or into the green here, especially with my player's mistake. So we're at around 10 rings here. It'll take me right up into max. You can see I'm actually right at max, like literally at max. Didn't want that great ball. However, I should be considering enough. It looks like I did hit that fringe, and you can see that I can just put it really, really close. And that's one of the reasons that I love this club for this tour, is to be able to just hit shots like that. Keep in mind that I had to make sure that I hit the fairway, the fringe instead of the fairway. So you can't land short in that situation. So you do got to be very, very careful. But you can see that you can just kind of master this tour and just kind of dissect guys who just don't, you know, have the right clubs on. Don't get me wrong, you can pull that off with a Parc. You have to kind of play it a little bit different with but just being able to crank the spin up like that is definitely an advantage. It lets me be able to kind of win 10 to 20% of basically holes where guys make mistakes. Because all I'll need to do is just crank up the backspin and just put it up there by the hole somewhere within 4 or 5 yards. Because you'll see some pretty nasty winds that can potentially get out of hand, and guys will be 9-10 yards. And if you have to beat 9-10 yards, that's going to be very easy to do just by doing that cranked up backspin shot. Keep in mind that if it's a tailwind or a little bit different wind, you kind of have to change your land zone, okay? So there's times that I land on the fairway. In that scenario, if I do land on the fairway, in fact, you actually saw me do this. If you check out my other guide, I'm pretty sure I had one where I put too much backspin on and it came up short, but it was only like 7 yards short. But it was more so a mistake. I just kind of underplayed it by a ring. If it would have actually landed just a yard longer, would have been a little bit better shot. But do check out, you know, both of these guides, because that's what they're there for, is to help you guys get through these later tours and make you guys better players. You can see, even with me not practicing these tours whatsoever, I can just, because of the way that I understand, the way that, the things are working, that I can just kind of work through it. And even if I make a mistake on one hole, I might give up a match, but my win streaks always are larger than my lose streaks. So this is a very, very challenging hole. One of my least favorite for this tour, because it actually is a very, very tough shot with a Thor's hammer. And I don't like giving up the Thor's hammer. I really, really hate to. But this sets up a lot better for Apocalypse. So it's very, very tough to curl this enough. One thing that you can try to do is you can sometimes try to keep it a little bit shorter. So that looks pretty nicely done. As I mentioned, I need to get kind of a little bit too aggressive with this shot, and that's one of the main reasons that I don't like it. So 7 rings down, first off, I'm going to try to not overpower it for the most part, and I'll try to just land it up here somewhere. So very, very little overpower. You'll see me try to use the curl, and you can see that I'm trying to predict kind of 7 rings down more or less. Trying to use as much of the curl as I can. And you can see with what I'm doing with the overpower, just trying to control it. But you can see that I got to kind of get really aggressive on this right edge, because I don't have the curl. So here you can see it barely rolls into the fairway. I could have used just a little bit more topspin, but hopefully that's good enough. I like to be safer than sorry there. So that's one of the reasons that you didn't see me, try to do too much there, is because, when I get a tough win like that, where I can only curl it so much, I don't want to land through the fairway and then potentially have it run out into the rough, if at all possible. So you'll see me play it just a little bit more cautious. And also keep in mind, how close I do have to get to that edge. It has to get somewhere towards the edge, but with just a little bit more overpower there, it would have been just a little bit better shot. But as I mentioned, I'm happy to just kind of take my eagle and run. Now, what you'll see here is this is one of the most uphill holes in the game here. So you'll see that we're hitting to a much, much higher green. So you can see that I'm using minus 15%. I may end up going just a slight into overpower. Aside from that, you'll see that I probably need to kind of ball guide offset a bit. So I'm going to try to do something like this with just a little bit of overpower, 5, 10. So somewhere in here. As I mentioned, the only thing I really care about is just kind of getting to the shootout. But if I do hit a well-played shot, I can still send it towards the hole and give it a good chance. Well, that was a really good chance. So it looked like I was still able to get it. About 4 backspin typically is the sweet spot on that. So fortunate to be able to get that. As I mentioned, I'm not going for that at all. You can see I'm playing very cautiously. I'd rather just get to that hole, just be able to get through it, and just make it to the shootout. So I'm not even worried that my drive was kind of a little bit short. I'm just trying to do kind of the bare minimum that I can to make sure that I'm able to get through that one. So let's keep looking, 15 more minutes or so. So I'll try to probably put up 2 more for you guys. See if I can get some new holes with fresh perspectives, and try to, for the most part, try to eliminate my mistakes. That's what I try to do for you guys, is I play a little bit more cautiously when I'm doing these than I do with when I'm playing myself, because I want to make sure that you guys are kind of playing within your means and not trying to do too much, because you can see sometimes with how just one little mistake can end up costing you. Now, there's two ways to do this. So you can see that I don't see anything. Season 1, right? Yeah, Season 1. So there's two ways to do this. This is actually a really tough shot. I can either kind of go for this and maybe barely creep it over. This is actually a very, very tough wind. Or you need to lay up. So what you're going to see me do is kind of play maybe about 5 rings. I'm not even going to use the notebook. A little bit of curl. And I'm just going to try to get it over to the other fairway. I may not make it. In fact, from the camera view, I'm not going to. It looks like I had enough power to make it, but you could see that it was very, very close. And the alternative is you need to lay up. If you lay up to right here, there's a chance you can pull it off. So that's another thing that my opponent can do. It looks like he's also going to go for it. And as I mentioned, it just kind of has to be perfect. If it's not, you're just going to kind of hit the bunker. But, with me in the bunker, there's a good chance my opponent will be in the bunker. So there's really nothing being lost. However, I could have kind of just stole that game away, essentially, by being able to just get it there. Now, what I imagine is I might not be able to get this to the fairway. I'm going to give it everything I can now. So if I can get it to the fairway, I can maybe get myself a pitch. Looks like I just crept it on. So this gives me at least a chance to hold out for eagle. However, it's a really, really hard pitch from there. It's not very holdable. And you'll also see that I'm playing with a non-side spin ball. I really don't like to go up to this ball. Oftentimes you might see me lay up. Even if you lay up though, and then you get a second wind like this, making it to the green is almost impossible. So here's what we're going to try to do. We'll try to crank up the backspin a little bit more. Try to land right on the green somewhere. Just try to use this backstop. So you can see we're very, very much towards max club here. So let me just get that in. Another thing you'll see is, it's probably uphill. So I'm thinking, maybe 6 rings. You can see that it's uphill. So 6-ish rings, and then I'm just going to curl it some as well. That's even 7 some rings. Wind effect. So, keep it in mind, wind effect, that the ball will end up kind of pushing. Oh no, I didn't get it high enough up the hill. Who would have ever thought? I would have thought that was almost guaranteed to go up. Should have pulled the 6 rings. I pulled 7. I was just kind of running out of time. And just kind of, where I pulled down on the screen is where I had to kind of leave it. However, I thought with wind effect, I could still be okay, that the ball guide's going to expand out. However, it was still just a little bit much. Would have been nice to have just a little bit more of that slope. Give myself a good chance. However, we're going to go to shootout. This is perfect. So that way you guys get more exposure to the holes. In fact, people often ask me about the shootouts. They're like, Zach, can you put up more shootouts? Stuff like that. So this works out perfect. So those guys can see just a little bit more perspective. As you can see, my take on the holes, especially with the Golf Clash Notebook tool, it kind of probably has a different perspective than what you see most. But you'll also see that with the Notebook tool, that 0.5% elevation is enough 90% of the time, unless we're talking about kind of like uphill shots. But you'll see that not a lot is uphill. So kind of got lucky here. The Power 4 ball actually helps me for this hole, because you'll see that I typically am going to kind of be at max range here. And what you'll typically have to do for this hole is you'll have to overplay it. What you'll see is I won't have to overplay it with the Golf Clash Notebook tool. So guys will have to do maybe like a 30-40% overplay when they play this hole. I won't have to do that because I have the wind directional tool that factors in some of that for you. You'll also see that I'm kind of pulling down towards min a bit. So 10.4 here, 12.3 rings. I'm not pulling down towards min, but I'm pulling like more towards mid club. So maybe, 11-ish rings here, I'm thinking, 70%. And of course, wind effect. So you're going to need to be thinking about wind effect. So make sure that, you're factoring that in. God, I don't know why this guy's talking in my backswing. The tool. So fortunately, looks like, overall not too bad. It's very, very tough to play that hole because you have to kind of land right where you want. And then, of course, guy can't wait 5 more seconds and backs out. So pretty much just delaying the tutorial for you guys. Sometimes what I can do is I can force close it, open it back up. You'll typically see guys drop out. You'll be able to see their timer going when you do this. But sometimes it does like trigger the event. Doesn't look like it's going to. It's because the guy got mad, and here you can see the opponent disconnect. The guy got mad, left out, so whatever. Let's keep going, guys. One more hole for you guys. So hopefully you guys found this video tutorial helpful. You'll see that, as I mentioned, this entire course, no elevation. If you use the Golf Clash notebook, especially when we're looking at the shootouts. What's the most I did? 5% one time. And, all 9 of these holes right now are very, very close to 0% elevation. So this tour is there for the taking with the new Golf Clash notebook numbers. If you're using these numbers and putting in the wind input and using your slider the way that I do, you're going to put yourself in a great position. Keep in mind, there's still going to be holes like this. This is significantly uphill. There's nothing we can do about that. Like if holes are significantly uphill, they require elevation. There's no denying that. Now, this is a very, very challenging wind for a Thor. One of the things that I can do is kind of play my opponent. And that's something that, I typically recommend would be playing your opponent, figure out where he is. Good ball here. So let's see how his shot ends up. Looks like with the good ball, he's in the rough. So there's a couple things I can do here. I can either set up an additional bag to where I can kind of swap out and have some length and kind of go for the win here. If I can pull this drive off, I can essentially beat him. Now, I don't do this often because I really don't want to put this much pressure. Like I said, I don't like leaving that Thor's hammer. However, if I get this way down there, using this tool, especially after watching my opponent's mistake, I can take advantage of the situation. So you'll see at least 5% extra, plus some curl. So I'm thinking somewhere around here. And you can see that I can just squeak it into the fairway. And as I mentioned, with my opponent's mistake, there's a good chance with a 400 plus yard drive. But I just got wind in the face, so I still am going to have to work for it. I see this often when you drive it significantly farther than there's like a difference window or something. Once you exceed a certain limit from where your opponent is, you get a lot of this, where they're trying to level the playing field and kind of let the opponent catch up a bit. I started noticing it, only about 6 months ago when they added Tour 12, but it is just kind of an interesting fact to see. Now, I should still be okay. I'm going to go relatively max on the power. Maybe just a little bit of curl, a little bit of topspin, very, very minimal. And I'm not even going to use the tool because I'm just going to try to, aim up here, a little bit of curl, and just kind of max it out. You can see that it's all points are fairway up there. So, I don't expect this to be that much of a dangerous shot. And more so than anything, I'm just trying to make sure that I get it up here towards the green, give myself a chance. I'd rather that roll off, to be honest with you. So you can see I put myself in a good position. Now, what I would typically do is, maybe give my opponent the stroke back and go to the shootout. However, I feel a little bit less confident in going to the shootout with my Apocalypse. The reason of doing this was to beat my opponent outright. I thought I had a very good opportunity to do so, so that's what I did. I don't want to give up this match because now I'm unprepared for the shootout. I'm using a bag that I don't like to use. And you'll also see this putt might not be necessarily a gimme, so you do want to just kind of, caution yourself here. Try to concentrate on perfect ball. It looks like I was able to roll that one in, and we'll be able to switch back bags. I'm going to do one more hole for you guys. This was going to be my last. Whoops, wrong one. That was going to be my last, but I'm going to go ahead and do one more because we didn't make it to shootout, and I just wanted to kind of show you that, I was taking more of a risk to just kind of win outright because of my players' mistakes. And I encourage you guys to do, more or less kind of the same. Is you guys want to just play just a little bit more aggressive if you get a window where you know that your opponent's going to have essentially no chance at the green. Best case scenario, he holds out a wedge. So otherwise, you're going to see me play pretty casual. And, here's another example here. We just kind of worked through something like this, and I'm going to try to play it very similar to what you guys saw. Now, in terms of wind effect and everything, I'm going to try to play very, very similar to what you guys saw me do last time, where I'm kind of bouncing over here with a full hook shot. I'm playing off the left of the bullseye. And again, since it's a headwind, I'm going to underplay my ring. So I might go, I'm thinking another 7 or 8 again. So there's 5, 7. And keep in mind that I'm playing off the left of the bullseye there. So I'm not playing the center of the bullseye. I'm kind of positioning the left of my bullseye to be where I want it. And you can see I was within a ring of being too much there. So I really did cut that close. I was pretty much playing almost the number. So what I sometimes do is I might, overcorrect just another ring or two just to be on the safe side. But you can see no harm, no foul. I'm up there good. I'll be within my thorn distance, and I'll also have a good angle to where I'm not shooting over that bunker, which is what I typically am because I'm usually on the right-hand side. So again, I talked about this, it's maybe about 5 or 10% uphill. However, I'm going to probably overplay because I need to be thinking wind effect. So I'm using almost like a plus 20%. So I do want to just let you guys know kind of what I'm doing and kind of why I'm doing it as well. It's wind effect. So it's not an elevation, it's wind effect. Oh no, I didn't. I didn't switch the bags. Crap, I can't do the thorn shot. There's no way this is going to be as good of a shot. No way. This is annoying. Five-ish rings. 5.4 rings. You can even see that the fairway is very, very crooked. It's one of the biggest reasons I don't want to do this. You can see that the ball guide was just deflecting all over the place. Oh, that still should have been in. Oh, man. I can't believe it. That fourth hop was literally on the edge of the cup. Like, half the time they will actually give you the drop for that. Really upset, though, that I didn't get to do a thorn. With that being said, this thorn isn't the easiest. You don't want to do it, you do want to do it the backspin way, in my opinion. And just try to do it like the way that I taught you on the first time that we saw this one. Try to bend it around the pin. That keeps it from running into it. You can see that mine was probably just a fraction offline of where I needed it to be. And when you use that side spin, it just bends around the pin. You usually can avoid the pin 99%. I just kind of had, more than anything, kind of bad luck. You could see how curved the fairway was. That's the biggest reason that I'd suggest, staying away from what we were doing here, because the fairway is just too curved. You don't want to kind of come in that front door there. So 2 shots right on the edge, almost able to get. It looks like we both kind of got on the wrong side of luck there. So let's see what I can do for the shootouts. Once again, this kind of works out for you guys, so you guys get to see more exposure to the shootouts. Because I know this is primarily what you guys like to look for, but I do recommend, increasing your knowledge about tour knowledge, because the core holes is where a lot of mistakes can be undone, and you can really grind out some good, let's take a look. Ooh, tailwind. I was really hoping for a headwind, especially against a Parc 6. So what I can do is I can land up here with a driver, full backspin. Sometimes I'll use 8 bars, depending on sometimes even 7 bars, depending on if it's straight in the face. But huge advantage here on this hole with Thor hammer. I have I've lost maybe 2 or 3 times with Thor hammer in this tour. It's a very, very small number. But when I'm going cat against Sniper 10, I still have the advantage. Don't get me wrong. However, if this guy executes and considers wind effect very good, this is a good opportunity as well to be able to pull off this shot. So the first thing that you'll notice is I'm going to be kind of up towards max, but pulling away from max. So since I'm pulling away from max, I need to use a slider positioning just a little bit less. So somewhere around here, 80% maybe, 13.5 rings. And again, wind effect is going to be paramount here. So you'll see maybe 3.5 on the backspin here. I'll usually rotate from this perspective here. Also, when you move up to higher ground, it's going to launch. So you're going to see me almost offset at kind of an angle. You see that I might not be pulling straight. I might just be pulling just a little bit more back towards the tee box. Now what this does is it usually kind of keeps it from launching. So it usually doesn't land as long. It still came in a little bit hot. So it looks like I might not have quite had that angle down. But keep in mind that I was trying to kind of intentionally rotate just a little bit more back towards the tee and not as much towards the side. And as I mentioned, the reason for that is because the ball tends to carry too far, as you can see that it did in my shootout. The ball still carried too far because I move up to such high ground with my adjustment. So if I'm starting down here on the flat, I pull up to a higher ground, the ball is going to launch. In that case, it almost launches a ring or 2 farther, maybe as much as 2 rings. So it really is important that you get that second hop up by the green to land on the fringe. Once it lands into the green, you can see my ball comes in too hot and goes past the hole. So to counter that, what I typically do is I pull at a slight angle because I'm moving up to higher ground, and it usually offsets that amount, and I can usually get it to be perfect. One of the things that I just want to make a little bit of a note about, I was being a little cautious there. I didn't want to have what happened to my opponent happen to me. So I was being a little bit cautious to make sure that I landed up on the hill. I knew anywhere up on the green, I was going to win that shootout. So do keep in mind that if my opponent's 2 yards, I'm going to go all in. I'm going to try to hit the perfect shot and try to pull back and do it absolutely perfect. In a situation like that, I'm going to play a little bit more cautious and just make sure that the ball does land for that second hop easily into the fringe at minimum. And in that case, it even landed onto the green, and that's why you saw it run through. So there is some strategy involved as to what, I might not always have enough time to talk about these things as I'm shooting, but that's one of the things that I was thinking about with that shot is I wanted to make sure that I didn't over pull back and have that, because, I haven't hit that rough in a while, but I also don't want to do it once my opponent's given me a clear window. So keep those tips in mind. Hopefully you guys got some value to this. And, good luck with your Tour 11. Let me know how it goes. And I will catch you guys later. I'll be doing some more Tour 10, Tour 9, Tour 8. I'm going to be working back and doubling up all these tours for you guys. So good luck with your rounds. Let me know how it goes. And hopefully you guys are winning a lot of games in Tour 11.